My older sister, Rebecca, had always been different. She couldn't handle loud noises. They overwhelmed her senses in ways I never quite understood. So when the smoke detectors started shrieking at 2 a.m. in our Portland townhouse, I wasn't surprised she'd disabled them weeks earlier. The beeping hurt her ears, she'd said. Mum and Dad had just shaken their heads and let it go. They always let things go when it came to Rebecca. But that night, when I smelled smoke curling up from the kitchen, I knew we had seconds, not minutes. I ran to her room and found her standing frozen in the hallway, hands pressed over her ears, even though the alarms were silent. The smoke was getting thicker. I grabbed her arm, maybe too roughly, maybe not roughly enough, and dragged her toward the front door. She fought me the entire way, scratched at my arms, screaming that I was hurting her, that she didn't want to go outside in her pajamas, that I was making a scene. But I got her out. We both survived. 3 days later, 2 police officers showed up at my apartment. Rebecca had filed assault charges against me. She claimed I'd attacked her without provocation, that I'd caused bruises on her arms, that I was violent and unstable. My parents stood in the background during her testimony, saying nothing. When I finally worked up the courage to beg them, literally beg them, to tell the truth, to protect me for once, my mother touched my shoulder and whispered, "We just want peace in the house, Elizabeth. Can't you understand that?" That's when something inside me broke. I stopped trying to make them see reason. I stopped calling. I stopped showing up for family dinners where Rebecca got to play victim while I played the villain. I went completely silent. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Rebecca. Just a photo of our childhood living room, the walls blackened from smoke damage, furniture destroyed, everything gutted. The caption read, "Do you feel better now? Was this worth it?" I deleted the message. I deleted her number. But I couldn't delete the image burned into my mind or the knowledge that my own family would rather watch me suffer than confront her manipulation. That same week, another nightmare began, one I didn't even know was coming. It started with Grandma Dorothy calling me for an emergency family meeting. "Just me," she said, "not Rebecca. This was different, important." I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. After all, Grandma Dorothy had been the one constant in my chaotic family. She'd raised me more than my own parents had, told me stories, braided my hair, taught me to bake her famous apple pie. If anyone in that family still loved me, it was her. I arrived at her house in southeast Portland on a cold November evening. She'd made dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. "My grandfather's favorite meal," she said. My grandfather, Henry Anderson, had died in a car accident in 1985, 15 years before I was born, but Grandma Dorothy talked about him like he'd just stepped out to get the mail. After dinner, she took my hand with surprising strength for an 82-year-old woman. "Elizabeth," she said, her pale blue eyes bright with something I couldn't identify. "I need to tell you about your destiny." I remember laughing nervously. Destiny seemed like a big word for a Tuesday evening in Portland. "You have his eyes," she continued, touching my face. "Henry's eyes. That same green-grey colour, like the ocean before a storm. And your hands. Look at your hands, sweetheart. Those are his hands. Long fingers, perfect for playing piano or—" She paused, her smile turning strange. "Perfect for holding babies." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "I've been preparing you your whole life, Elizabeth, since the day you were born, and I looked into your newborn face and saw him staring back at me. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're not just his granddaughter, you're his second chance." She stood then, still gripping my hand, and led me toward the basement door. I'd never been allowed in the basement as a child. It was Grandma's space, she'd always said. Private, off limits. Now she was pulling me down the wooden stairs into the cold, dim space below. In the corner sat an industrial freezer, the kind restaurants use. It hummed loudly in the silence. "This freezer," Grandma Dorothy said, her voice trembling with emotion, "contains your grandfather's future. 22 vials of his sperm preserved since 1984. I had it harvested 3 months before the accident. I knew, call it intuition, call it love. I knew something might happen, so I made sure part of him would survive. My mouth went dry. Grandma, what? You're going to carry his child, Elizabeth, his son, his legacy. I've been waiting for you to be old enough, healthy enough, perfect enough. And now you are. I've already scheduled the first appointment at a fertility clinic, next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Dr. Morrison is an old friend. He understands the importance of family legacy. I yanked my hand free. This is insane. I can't. Her face hardened. Or won't, because there's a difference, sweetheart. One is inability, the other is defiance. I backed toward the stairs. I'm leaving. I don't think so. That's when I noticed my car keys were no longer in my jacket pocket. And when I tried the front door, it was locked from the outside. All 3 deadbolts engaged. Grandma, unlock the door now. She sat on her floral couch, serene as a Buddha statue. We'll talk about this in the morning. You're just overwhelmed. It's a lot to process, but you'll understand once you sleep on it. I've prepared the guest room for you. Fresh sheets, the lavender pillow spray you like. You'll see things more clearly after a good night's rest. I tried every door, every window. The house had become a cage, and I was trapped inside with a woman whose love had twisted into something monstrous. I spent that first night in Grandma Dorothy's guest room trying to convince myself this was a misunderstanding. She was old, maybe confused. Morning would come and we'd laugh about the absurdity of it all. She'd give me my keys and I'd drive home and never speak of this again. But morning brought my parents instead of freedom. They arrived at 7 a.m., let themselves in with their own keys, and found me in the kitchen trying to figure out which window had the weakest locks. My father, Gary, a tall man who'd grown smaller over the years, wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother, Patricia, had clearly been crying. Elizabeth, Dad said quietly, your grandmother called us. She's worried about you. Worried about me? Dad, she won't let me leave. I stopped. How did you explain that your grandmother wanted to impregnate you with your dead grandfather's baby without sounding completely unhinged? She told us about her plan, Mum interjected, about Henry's legacy. And honestly, sweetheart, it's not as crazy as you think. Henry was a wonderful man. Having a part of him back in the world wouldn't be such a terrible thing. I stared at her. You knew about this. Dad finally looked at me. She's been planning it for years. We thought... He trailed off. We thought maybe you'd see it as an honor to be forcibly impregnated with my grandfather's sperm. Don't be dramatic, Grandma Dorothy said, appearing in the doorway with a tray of bacon and eggs. No one said anything about force. This is a family decision made with love. Then give me back my keys and let me decide from my own home. She smiled. You'll have your keys when you're thinking clearly. My parents stayed for breakfast. We sat around the table like a normal family having a normal morning, except I was a prisoner and they were my guards. When I tried to leave with them, Dad physically blocked the door. Just give her a few days, he muttered. Work with her on this. You know how Mum gets when she has her heart set on something. They left me there. I spent the next 3 days testing every possible escape route. The windows were painted shut or screwed closed. The doors required keys from both sides. Even the garage was locked from the inside. My cell phone was dead, and when I found the charger, it had been cut in half. Grandma Dorothy maintained an eerie cheerfulness throughout. She cooked elaborate meals, talked about baby names, showed me photo albums comparing my features to Grandfather Henry's. She'd compiled evidence over 23 years, pictures of me at various ages placed side by side with images of him at similar ages. The resemblance was undeniable and deeply unsettling. See, she'd say, tracing her finger over a photo of me at 5 next to him at 5. The same nose, the same smile, even the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. It's all Henry. You're more his than anyone else in this family. On the 4th day, she revealed the next phase of her plan. She'd been taking me to what she called preparatory appointments with Dr. Aaron Morrison, a fertility specialist who practiced out of a strip mall clinic in Beaverton. She'd been documenting my menstrual cycle since I was 12. I remember the vitamins she'd insisted I take, the health questionnaires I'd filled out thinking they were normal grandmother concern. Everything has been leading to this moment, she explained over dinner. Your diet, your exercise, your medical history. I've built the perfect vessel for Henry's return. I'm not a vessel, I'm a person. You're both, she said simply, and soon you'll be a mother too. That night she tried a different approach. She made me tea, chamomile, she said, and we sat together watching old home videos of grandfather Henry. She pointed out his laugh, his mannerisms, the way he'd hold babies, my mother, my uncle, with such tenderness. He wanted more children, Grandma Dorothy whispered. We only had 2, but he dreamed of a big family, 6, 7 kids. He would have been such an amazing father to them all. And now, through you, that dream can still come true. The tea made me drowsy. I tried to stay alert, but my eyelids grew impossibly heavy. The last thing I remember was Grandma Dorothy's hand stroking my hair, humming a lullaby I half recognized. When I woke, it was dark. My bedroom door was open, and I could hear voices downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Tuesday morning then, 10 a.m. sharp. That was Grandma Dorothy. And you're sure about this, Dorothy? If she's unwilling, there are ethical concerns, Dr. Morrison's voice. She's willing in her heart. She just doesn't know it yet. The anxiety is making her confused, but we'll help her through it. Family always helps family. I retreated to my room and barricaded the door with every piece of furniture I could move. For the first time, real terror set in. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This was a plan that had been in motion since before I was born. The next morning, I woke to Grandma Dorothy removing the door from its hinges while humming Tennessee Waltz, Grandfather Henry's favorite song she'd told me 1,000 times. Tuesday is coming, sweetheart, she said, stepping over my makeshift barricade like it was made of paper. We need to start preparing your body properly. Dr. Morrison recommended some prenatal vitamins and a few other supplements. She handed me a glass of orange juice and 5 pills of various sizes and colors. What are these? Vitamins, folic acid, iron, everything a healthy young woman needs. I didn't take them. She sighed, disappointed but not surprised, and left them on the nightstand with a note. Take these, for Henry. That evening, my parents returned. This time, they brought takeout, Thai food from my favorite restaurant on Division Street. We ate in silence until my mother finally spoke. We want you to know we support you through this, she said, not looking at me. If you need anything, emotional support, prenatal care, baby supplies, we're here for you. I need you to let me leave. My father set down his fork. Elizabeth, your grandmother has been planning this for over 2 decades. She's spent her entire retirement fund on fertility preservation, on medical consultations, on preparing for this moment. Do you understand how much love that represents? How much dedication? It's not love, I said. It's obsession. Call it what you want, Mum said, finally meeting my eyes. But it's happening. We're all agreed. Even Dr. Morrison thinks it's medically sound. I don't consent. You will, Grandma Dorothy said from the doorway. When you hold your grandfather's baby, when you see his eyes looking up at you from that tiny face, you'll understand why this was necessary. The next 2 days blurred together. Grandma Dorothy increased her surveillance, following me everywhere except the bathroom, and even then she'd stand outside the door. She'd had bars installed on all the first-floor windows. For security, she claimed, but we both knew the truth. Monday night, the night before the scheduled clinic appointment, I tried everything. I begged, I cried, I threatened, I bargained. I offered to sign legal documents promising I'd voluntarily do this in 5 years. I offered money I didn't have. I offered anything except what she wanted, immediate compliance. She listened patiently to every proposal, then shook her head. Henry's waited 40 years, she said. He's not waiting another 5, and neither am I. I'm 82, Elizabeth. I might not have 5 more years. I need to see this baby. I need to hold my husband's child one more time before I die. That night, she gave me something to help me sleep. I pretended to swallow the pills, but palmed them instead. After she left, I tried one last desperate plan. I'd break a window and scream until the neighbors called the police. But she'd thought of that too. The windows were double-paned, and when I smashed the inside glass, I discovered she'd installed plexiglass on the outside. No sound escaped, and she must have heard the crash because within minutes she was in my room with a first aid kit, tisking at my cut hands. "That was foolish," she said, bandaging my bleeding palms. "You could have hurt yourself badly. Think about the baby, Elizabeth. Every injury to you is an injury to Henry's child." "There is no baby." "Not yet," she agreed, "but tomorrow there will be, or at least the beginning of one." She gave me another sedative, this time forcing my mouth open, checking under my tongue, making me drink a full glass of water to ensure I swallowed. The last thing I remember was her pulling up a chair beside my bed, holding my hand and whispering, "Your grandfather would be so proud of you." I woke to sunlight and the smell of pancakes. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed the whole nightmare. Then I saw Grandma Dorothy sitting in my room's corner chair, watching me with that unnerving intensity she'd developed. "Good morning, sweetheart. Big day today. How are you feeling?" My mouth tasted like copper and chemicals. My head felt stuffed with cotton. Whatever she'd given me last night had knocked me completely unconscious. I tried to sit up, but the room spun. "What did you give me?" "Just a mild sedative. Nothing that will hurt the baby. Dr. Morrison approved everything. Now come on, breakfast is ready, and we have to leave for the clinic at 9:30. The morning passed in a fog. I remember eating breakfast, or trying to, while Grandma Dorothy chatted about nursery colours and baby shower themes. I remember her helping me dress in soft, comfortable clothes she'd purchased specifically for today. I remember staring at myself in the bathroom mirror and not recognizing the person looking back. My father's truck was in the driveway. Both my parents were waiting, dressed like they were going to church. Mum even had her good purse. "A family occasion," Grandma Dorothy announced. "We should all be together for this." I tried to run then, but whatever drug she'd given me had left my legs weak. Dad caught me before I made it to the sidewalk. He held me upright while I struggled, his face a mask of misery. "Don't make this harder," he whispered. "Please, Elizabeth, for all of us, just let it happen." They put me in the back seat between Mom and Grandma Dorothy. Some distant, still-functioning part of my brain noted that this was kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault. But who would believe me? Who would help? The clinic was in a run-down strip mall between a nail salon and a check-cashing place. The sign outside read, "New Beginnings Fertility Center," in faded letters. Inside smelled like antiseptic and artificial flowers. Dr. Aaron Morrison looked exactly like someone who'd perform ethically questionable procedures in a strip mall. Late 60s, tired eyes, too friendly smile. He greeted Grandma Dorothy like an old friend and barely acknowledged me. "Mrs. Anderson, right on time, and this must be Elizabeth. My, you do look like Henry. Dorothy's shown me pictures, but seeing you in person, remarkable." "I don't want to be here," I said clearly. "I don't consent to any procedure." He patted my shoulder. "Dorothy warned me you'd be nervous. Perfectly natural. Many women feel anxious before conception procedures, but I promise this will be quick and painless. You'll hardly feel anything." "I don't consent," I repeated. "Let's get you settled in the exam room, shall we?" He led us, me stumbling, held up by my father, to a small room with an examination table covered in paper. Standard gynecological stirrups, medical equipment I recognized from regular checkups, but which now looked like instruments of torture. "I'll give you some privacy to undress and get comfortable," Dr. Morrison said. "Dorothy, perhaps you could help Elizabeth. And Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, you're welcome to wait in the consultation room. We'll call you when we're ready to begin." My parents left without looking back. Alone with Grandma Dorothy, I tried one more time. Please, please don't do this. If you ever loved me, if I ever meant anything to you beyond being a incubator for Grandpa, please let me go." She cupped my face in her hands. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her expression was serene, almost beatific. "I love you more than you'll ever understand, Elizabeth. This is love, preserving family, honoring Henry, giving you the greatest gift possible, the chance to bring him back. One day, when you're holding that baby, you'll thank me." She helped me onto the table, positioned the stirrups, draped a paper sheet over my lower half. The door opened, and Dr. Morrison returned carrying a small cooler, the kind you'd take to a picnic. "We'll use 3 vials today," he said, pulling on gloves, "just to maximize our chances. Dorothy's been waiting a long time for this. Let's make sure it takes." 3 vials. 3 portions of my dead grandfather's genetic material, preserved for 40 years, about to be forced into my body without my consent. I tried to get up, but Grandma Dorothy's surprisingly strong hands held my shoulders down. Dr. Morrison worked quickly, efficiently, talking the whole time about optimal fertility windows and implantation rates. I remember the cold of the speculum, the violation of the catheter, the complete powerlessness. "All done," Dr. Morrison announced. Very smooth. "Now, Elizabeth, you'll need to stay lying down for at least 20 minutes to give the sperm time to travel. Dorothy, you can come sit with her." He left us alone. Grandma Dorothy pulled a chair close to the examination table and took my hand. "The hard part's over, sweetheart. Now we just wait. In 2 weeks, we'll do a pregnancy test. If it doesn't take this time, we'll try again. We have 19 more vials, plus I've already scheduled appointments for the next 3 months. One way or another, Henry's coming back to us." I turned my face away and stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the holes in the acoustic panels. 247 in the tile directly above me. I counted them 3 times to make sure. The drive home was silent, except for Grandma Dorothy's humming. That same song, Tennessee Waltz. When we arrived back at her house, she had me lie down on the living room couch with my hips elevated on pillows. "Dr. Morrison said this increases conception chances," she explained, adjusting the pillows. "We'll keep you like this for a few hours. I've made chicken soup for lunch. Protein is good for early pregnancy." My parents had already left, probably relieved they didn't have to witness the aftermath of what they'd enabled. That evening, Grandma Dorothy presented me with a journal, a thick notebook with baby's first moments embossed on the cover. "I thought we could document this journey together," she said. "Every day until we get that positive test. Every symptom, every feeling. Henry would want to know every detail about his child's conception and development." "There's no baby." "Not yet," she agreed cheerfully. "But soon." Dr. Morrison was very optimistic. She made me take vitamins, prenatal supplements, folic acid, iron, DHA. She watched to ensure I swallowed each one. Then she served dinner: salmon, sweet potatoes, steamed broccoli. "Brain development nutrients," she explained. That night, she installed a baby monitor in my room. The camera pointed directly at my bed. "Just in case you need anything," she said. "You might not know you're having early pregnancy symptoms. I'll be watching." I lay awake long after she left, staring at the camera's little red recording light. In one day, I'd gone from granddaughter to prisoner to experimental breeding vessel. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that legally, I wasn't sure I had any recourse. Would anyone believe this story? Would anyone care? 2 days later, I discovered Grandma Dorothy had been documenting everything about me for years. While she was in the bathroom, I found her planning notebook, a massive 3-ring binder filled with meticulous records. My menstrual cycles since age 12, my eating habits, my exercise routines, medical history going back to birth, personality assessments, compatibility analyses with Grandfather Henry's genetic profile. There were charts showing optimal conception windows, backup plans if the first procedure didn't work, contingencies for morning sickness, pregnancy complications, gestational diabetes. She'd thought of everything. The most chilling section was titled Securing Compliance. It listed every possible way I might try to escape and detailed countermeasures for each scenario. Police explain mental instability. Hospital, medical power of attorney. Friends monitor communications. Physical escape. Locks, bars, surveillance. 20 years of planning had gone into this moment. I was never getting out. The next 2 weeks blurred into a nightmarish routine. Wake up, take vitamins, eat pregnancy-optimized meals, rest with elevated hips, listen to Grandma Dorothy read baby books aloud, and sleep under the watchful eye of the camera. She tested me daily. Pregnancy tests lined up on the bathroom counter like soldiers. Each negative result made her more anxious, more controlling. She adjusted my diet, increased my vitamin intake, had me doing yoga poses supposedly beneficial for implantation. "It's still early," she'd say, staring at another negative test. "Sometimes it takes a few weeks to show. We'll keep testing, and if this round didn't take, we have more chances." On day 14, she brought Dr. Morrison to the house for an examination. He set up portable ultrasound equipment in the living room and checked for signs of early pregnancy. Nothing. "Sometimes the first attempt doesn't work," he said, patting Grandma Dorothy's shoulder. "But we can try again. Her reproductive system appears healthy. There's no reason to think multiple attempts won't eventually succeed." After he left, Grandma Dorothy sat at the kitchen table and cried for the first time. Real tears, not the proud emotional tears when she talked about Grandfather Henry. These were tears of loss, of delayed resurrection. "I wanted this so badly," she whispered. "I've waited so long. Henry's waiting so long." A tiny, cruel part of me felt satisfaction. But mostly, I felt terror. Because I knew what came next. Another trip to the clinic, another procedure, another violation. She had 19 vials left. That night, she gave me stronger sedatives, double the usual dose. I barely remember her checking on me throughout the night, adjusting my position, whispering reassurances to a baby that didn't exist. Morning brought a surprise. My Aunt Caroline, Mum's younger sister, had come to visit. I hadn't seen her in months. She lived in San Francisco and worked as a therapist, the only member of my family who'd gone to college, the only one who'd ever questioned family dysfunction. Grandma Dorothy greeted her coolly at the door. "Caroline, this isn't a good time. I got a strange message from Liz, or rather, I didn't get one. She hasn't answered my texts in 3 weeks. Since I was in Portland for a conference, I thought I'd stop by." I tried to call out, but Grandma Dorothy's hand clamped over my mouth. She smiled pleasantly at Caroline. "Elizabeth's been under the weather, the flu. She's resting. I'd like to see her." "She's contagious." Caroline's eyes narrowed. "Let me see my niece, Dorothy, or I'm calling the police." A standoff in the hallway. Finally, Grandma Dorothy stepped aside, but she followed closely as Caroline came upstairs. I must have looked terrible. I hadn't showered properly in days. My hair was matted. I had dark circles under my eyes from sedatives and stress. Caroline's professional mask slipped for just a second, showing alarm. "Liz, are you okay?" Grandma Dorothy hovered in the doorway. "See, she's fine, just a bit run down from the flu." Caroline sat on my bed, studying me carefully. "Elizabeth, can you tell me what's going on?" This was my chance, maybe my only chance. But Grandma Dorothy was right there, watching every word. I started, then saw Grandma Dorothy's hand move toward her phone. If Caroline called the police, would they believe me? Grandma Dorothy had documentation, medical records, power of attorney signed when I was groggy after an appendectomy at 16, character witnesses. I had a story that sounded insane. "I'm just really tired," I said instead. "The flu knocked me out." Caroline didn't look convinced. "Okay, well, I'm staying at the Marriott downtown for the next 2 nights. Here's my room number." She handed me a business card. "If you need anything at all, call me." After she left, Grandma Dorothy took the business card and tore it into tiny pieces. "That was smart, Elizabeth. Caroline would just complicate things. She never understood family loyalty." That night, I overheard Grandma Dorothy on the phone with Dr. Morrison, scheduling another procedure. Friday morning, 3 days away. This time she said she wanted to try a different approach, more vials, more aggressive fertility drugs, whatever it took. I knew I had 3 days to escape or endure this horror all over again. The next morning, while Grandma Dorothy was in the garage doing laundry, I found her keyring on the kitchen counter. She'd been careless, distracted by failure. I grabbed my house key and slipped it into my sock. That night, I pretended to take the sedatives, but palmed them instead. Grandma Dorothy checked my mouth carefully, so I'd actually put them under my tongue and held them there until she left, then spit them into my pillowcase. Around 2 a.m., when the house was silent, I retrieved the key from my sock and unlocked my bedroom door. She'd started locking it from the outside after Caroline's visit. The hallway stretched before me, dark and quiet. I moved like a ghost, remembering every creaky floorboard from childhood visits. Third stair from the bottom, skip it. Kitchen door, push, don't pull. Living room window, locked, but I knew the trick. Lift up while pulling the latch. Freedom was right there. Then I saw it. My purse was gone. My wallet, my ID, my credit cards. Grandma Dorothy must have hidden them, but I couldn't stop now. I made it to the front door. 3 deadbolts, but I had the key. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the locks. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. Going somewhere, sweetheart. I didn't turn around. I unlocked the final deadbolt and ran. I ran barefoot down Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard at 2:30 in the morning, wearing pajamas, no phone, no wallet, no identification. I ran until my lungs burned and my feet bled. I ran until I reached a 24-hour plaid pantry convenience store on 39th Avenue. The clerk, a young guy with gauges and a blazer's cap, stared at me like I'd materialized from another dimension. "Please," I gasped, "can I use your phone?" He handed it over without questions. I called the only number I knew by heart other than my parents, my college roommate, Madison Chen, who lived in Seattle. She answered on the 6 ring. "Hello? Maddie, it's me. I need help." I don't remember everything I said. I remember crying. I remember the clerk bringing me a bottle of water and a blanket. I remember Maddie saying, "I'm leaving right now. Don't move. I'll be there in 3 hours." I waited in that plaid pantry until dawn, watching every car that passed, terrified I'd see Grandma Dorothy's silver Toyota. The clerk, his name was Tyler, didn't ask questions, just kept bringing me bottles of water and, eventually, a packaged sandwich he paid for himself. When Maddie's car pulled up at 5:47 a.m., I almost didn't believe it was real. She jumped out and pulled me into the fiercest hug I'd ever experienced. "Jesus Christ, Liz, what happened to you?" I told her everything during the drive to Seattle. Every detail, the frozen sperm, the forced procedure, the imprisonment, the planning. She listened without interrupting, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. "We're going straight to the police," she said. "And tell them what? My grandmother forcibly inseminated me with my grandfather's 40-year-old sperm. They'll think I'm insane. Then we go to a hospital, get you examined, document what happened. She has medical power of attorney over me. She has documents saying I'm mentally unstable. She has a network of doctors who will back her up. She's been planning this for 20 years, Maddie. 20 years. Maddie pulled over at a rest stop south of Olympia and turned to face me. "What do you want to do?" "I want to disappear. I want to be someone she can't find." "Then that's what we'll do. You can stay with me as long as you need. We'll figure this out." But even as she said it, even as we drove towards Seattle and theoretical safety, I knew Grandma Dorothy wouldn't stop looking. She'd spent 40 years preserving Grandfather Henry's sperm, 23 years preparing me. She'd invested her entire retirement, her entire sanity, into this delusion. She was never going to let me go. Maddie's apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood became my fortress for the next week. She'd lived there since graduating from the University of Washington 3 years earlier. It was a tiny studio, but it had a deadbolt, a security system, and most importantly, it was 174 miles from Portland. We spent the first 3 days just existing. Maddie called in sick to her job at Amazon so she could stay with me. I slept 14 hours the first night, collapsing from adrenaline crash and weeks of drugged sleep. When I finally woke up, Maddie had bought me clothes, toiletries, everything I needed to be human again. On day 4, she brought home her friend Aisha Thompson, a law student at Seattle University. Aisha listened to my story with the careful attention of someone trained to look for legal angles. "This is a criminal case," she said finally. "Forced medical procedures, false imprisonment, possibly sexual assault depending on how Washington state law interprets it. But here's the problem: proving it." "I have physical evidence," I said. "The procedure happened. A doctor would be able to—" "Would they? These procedures don't always leave obvious physical evidence, and your grandmother has documentation positioning you as mentally unstable. Any evidence could be explained away as you harming yourself or experiencing delusions. So I just have to live in hiding forever?" "No, we fight back, but we do it smart. First, we document everything while it's fresh. Every detail, every person involved, every location. Then we get you evaluated by an independent psychiatrist who'll testify you're completely rational. Then we file for a restraining order and simultaneously challenge the power of attorney. We build a case brick by brick." Aisha knew people. That's how I met Dr. Sarah Ankamir, a psychiatrist who specialized in coercive control and family abuse. She evaluated me over 3 sessions, asking careful questions, documenting my responses, observing my affect and coherence. Her report was definitive. I showed no signs of mental illness beyond expected trauma responses. I was rational, coherent, and clearly the victim of systematic abuse and reproductive coercion. Armed with this report and my detailed written testimony, Aisha helped me file for an emergency protective order in King County Superior Court. We also petitioned to have the medical power of attorney voided on grounds of fraud and coercion. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, I had to figure out how to live. Maddie helped me apply for a new ID from Washington state. I could claim I'd lost my Oregon license. She loaned me money. She helped me create a new email address, new social media accounts with maximum privacy settings. She taught me how to disappear into Seattle's urban anonymity. I got a job at a bookstore in the University District, Elliott Bay Book Company, a Seattle institution. The owner, Patricia Saunders, was in her 60s, had kind eyes, and didn't ask too many questions when I said I was starting over after leaving a difficult family situation. The work was simple and soothing, shelving books, running the register, recommending titles to customers. Every book I touched felt like a small piece of normalcy, but normalcy was fragile. The packages started arriving at the bookstore after my first week: baby clothes, pregnancy journals, a mobile for a nursery with wooden animals dangling from strings. Each box had no return address, but I knew who'd sent them. Patricia helped me document everything and file police reports. The Seattle PD was more sympathetic than I'd expected. Detective Lisa Chang took my statement seriously, especially after reading Dr. Enkamir's evaluation. "We can't prove who sent these," she said, "but we're documenting everything. If your grandmother violates the restraining order you're seeking, if she shows up in Seattle or contacts you directly, we'll have grounds to act." The protective order hearing arrived with terrifying speed. Aisha had arranged for representation from a non-profit legal aid organization that specialized in domestic abuse cases. My lawyer, Robert Mendez, was young but fierce. We drove down to Portland because that's where Grandma Dorothy lived and where the original abuse occurred. Maddie came with me for support, staying in the courtroom's gallery while I sat at the petitioner's table. Grandma Dorothy arrived with an attorney I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Paul Livingston of Livingston and Marsh, a firm I'd later learn specialized in elder law. When I saw her, I almost couldn't breathe. She looked smaller, older, frailer than I remembered. She wore her Sunday church clothes, a blue dress with pearl buttons, and had styled her white hair in soft curls. She looked like everyone's beloved grandmother, not a woman who'd imprisoned and violated me. She saw me and her face lit up with what looked like genuine joy and relief. She started to approach, but Mr. Livingston stopped her with a hand on her arm. Judge Karen Morrison, no relation to Dr. Morrison, thankfully, reviewed the paperwork with a neutral expression. She was African American, late 50s, with an air of having seen everything humanity had to offer. Robert presented our case methodically. My written testimony, Dr. Enkemere's evaluation, photos of the bars on Grandma Dorothy's windows, copies of the baby items she'd sent to Seattle, testimony from Tyler at the Plaid Pantry about finding me barefoot and terrified at 2 a.m. Mr. Livingston countered with Grandma Dorothy's narrative. I was a troubled young woman with a history of mental health issues. The medical power of attorney was legitimately obtained. She'd been trying to help me through a difficult period. The fertility treatments were something we'd discussed and I'd initially agreed to, but then I'd had an episode and run away. He presented medical records showing psychiatric medications prescribed to me as a teenager, anxiety medication I'd taken briefly after a car accident when I was 17. He had statements from my parents confirming my erratic behavior. He even had a statement from Rebecca about my violent tendencies, citing the fire incident. It was masterful character assassination, and it was working. I could see doubt creeping into Judge Morrison's expression. Then Robert called his surprise witness, Aunt Caroline. She'd flown up from San Francisco overnight after Aisha tracked her down. She took the stand in her professional clothes, slacks, blazer, simple jewelry, and methodically dismantled Grandma Dorothy's narrative. Elizabeth is not mentally ill, she testified in her calm therapist voice. She's being gaslit by a family system that enables my mother's delusions. When I visited 3 weeks ago, Dorothy physically prevented me from speaking privately with Elizabeth. The house had bars on windows. Elizabeth looked drugged and terrified. I reported my concerns to Adult Protective Services, but nothing came of it. You're a therapist, correct? Robert asked. Yes, licensed clinical psychologist. I've practiced for 18 years. In your professional opinion, is your mother capable of the behavior Elizabeth described? Caroline's face tightened with pain. Yes. My mother has an unhealthy attachment to my late father's memory that has escalated into a delusional disorder. She's been saving his biological material and planning this reproductive coercion for decades. I've tried to get her psychiatric help, but she refuses treatment and my siblings enable her. Mr. Livingston tried to paint Caroline as a disgruntled family member with an axe to grind, but she held firm. Judge Morrison called a 30-minute recess. Maddie found me in the bathroom having a panic attack. She held my hair while I vomited into the sink, then got me water and helped me pull myself together. When we reconvened, Judge Morrison delivered her ruling. I'm granting a temporary restraining order preventing Dorothy Anderson from coming within 500 feet of Elizabeth Anderson or contacting her directly or indirectly. This order will remain in effect for 6 months, at which point we'll have a review hearing. As for the medical power of attorney, I'm ordering a full competency evaluation for both parties. Mrs. Dorothy Anderson will undergo psychiatric evaluation to determine if she's suffering from delusions that impair her judgment. Elizabeth Anderson has already been evaluated and found competent, but we'll schedule a follow-up. This hearing is adjourned. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for. She hadn't revoked the power of attorney entirely, but it was something. Grandma Dorothy's face crumpled as the bailiff explained the restraining order. She reached out toward me, and for a second I saw the grandmother who'd taught me to bake apple pie. Then her expression hardened. As I left the courtroom, I heard her say to Mr. Livingston, "She's killing him. She's killing Henry all over again." In the parking lot, Caroline hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry I didn't do more sooner. I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't realize the extent. I'm going to petition for guardianship over my mother. She needs psychiatric help." "Will it work?" "I don't know. She's still legally competent in most ways, but I'll try." The drive back to Seattle felt like exhaling after holding my breath for weeks. Maddie played music, nothing sappy, just good driving rock, and we didn't talk about the hearing. We just drove north towards safety. But safety, I was learning, was always temporary. The packages continued. They arrived at the bookstore, at Maddie's apartment, even at Dr. Enkemir's office. Baby clothes, prenatal vitamins, photos of grandfather Henry with notes like, "He's waiting for you," and "You can't run from destiny." Patricia started intercepting them before I could see them, but I knew they were coming. Each one was a reminder that Grandma Dorothy's obsession hadn't died. It had just been legally restrained. 3 months after the hearing, the psychiatric evaluation results came back. Grandma Dorothy had been diagnosed with complicated grief disorder with delusional features. The psychologist recommended treatment, but couldn't legally force it. She was deemed mentally ill, but not incompetent. The power of attorney remained in a grey area, legally valid but ethically questionable. Robert filed motion after motion, but progress was slow. Meanwhile, I was building a life in Seattle. I'd been promoted to assistant manager at Elliott Bay. I'd moved out of Maddie's studio and into my own tiny apartment in the Fremont neighborhood. I'd adopted a cat from a shelter, a grey tabby I named Phoenix. I started dating someone, Daniel Park, a regular customer who taught computer science at the University of Washington. He was patient and kind and didn't push when I was vague about my family. Eventually, I told him everything. He listened without judgment, held me when I cried, and offered to be there however I needed. Life was becoming something approaching normal, but Grandma Dorothy's shadow never fully left. On my 26th birthday, I received a package. Not baby clothes this time, a photo album. Inside were pictures of me growing up, carefully curated to show happy moments with Grandma Dorothy. Baking together, gardening together, reading together. The last page showed Grandfather Henry holding a baby, my mother, I assumed. The resemblance to me was striking and unsettling. A note tucked inside read, "You can't run from who you are. He's in your blood waiting to return. When you're ready to fulfill your destiny, I'll be here. All my love forever, Grandma." I burned the album in my kitchen sink and cried for the grandmother I'd lost to delusion. The 6-month restraining order was extended to 3 years at the review hearing. Grandma Dorothy didn't contest it. According to Caroline, she'd retreated into a fantasy world where I was already pregnant, already raising Grandfather Henry's child. Reality had become negotiable for her. But she still sent packages. She still found ways around the restraining order's letter, if not its spirit. Anonymous packages. Items left at the bookstore by people she'd hired. She was nothing if not persistent. I stopped opening them. Patricia had a box in the back room where we collected them as evidence. Detective Chang kept investigating, but without proof of direct contact, there was little they could do. The mental toll was exhausting. Hypervigilance became my default state. I checked over my shoulder constantly. I varied my routes to work. I kept pepper spray in my purse. Daniel helped me install a security system in my apartment with cameras covering every entrance. Dr. Enkemir taught me to recognize the difference between reasonable caution and trauma-driven paranoia. We worked on reclaiming my sense of safety, inch by inch. 2 years after my escape, Caroline finally succeeded in getting Grandma Dorothy into assisted living. Not through legal guardianship, she'd never accomplished that, but through practicality. Grandma Dorothy had had a minor stroke and couldn't live alone anymore. The facility was in Beaverton, specializing in elderly patients with dementia and psychiatric conditions. According to Caroline, Grandma Dorothy had a room decorated with photos of Grandfather Henry and spent her days planning a nursery that would never exist. I felt relief, then guilt about feeling relief, then anger about feeling guilty. Trauma has layers like that. The packages stopped after she entered assisted living. For the first time in 2 years, I could go to work without wondering what horror awaited me. The silence was almost worse than the harassment. At least the packages had been a known quantity. Daniel proposed on a Tuesday evening in my kitchen. Nothing fancy, just the two of us and Phoenix. He knew marriage meant potential escalation from Grandma Dorothy, but he wanted to face it together. I said yes. We married at the courthouse with Maddie and Patricia as witnesses. The judge who performed the ceremony smiled warmly and wished us happiness. It felt like reclaiming something Grandma Dorothy had tried to steal. My autonomy, my choices, my future. We didn't post about it on social media, didn't tell family beyond Caroline, kept our marriage quiet and private. Still, within a week, Grandma Dorothy's lawyer sent a letter claiming I was making a mistake, that I was abandoning my sacred duty to family legacy. I filed it with all the other evidence and tried to move forward. Life became something I never thought possible during those weeks of imprisonment. Ordinary. I worked at the bookstore. Daniel taught his classes. We adopted a dog named Scout. We hosted dinner parties. We travelled to Vancouver for long weekends. We argued about whose turn it was to do dishes and laughed at inside jokes and built a life together. But every time my phone rang with an unknown number, my heart rate spiked. Every time a package arrived, I hesitated before opening it. Every time someone mentioned pregnancy or babies, I had to breathe through sudden panic. The trauma therapist Daniel encouraged me to see, Dr. James Foster, who specialized in complex PTSD, helped me understand that healing wasn't linear. Some days were better than others. Some triggers came from nowhere. 3 years after my escape, Caroline called with news. Grandma Dorothy had died. Another stroke, sudden and massive. She'd been alone in her room at the assisted living facility, surrounded by photos of Grandfather Henry and me. I didn't attend the funeral, neither did Caroline. My parents held a small service in Portland with some of Grandma Dorothy's elderly friends and neighbours. According to Caroline, they seemed relieved more than grief-stricken. The burden of enabling her delusion for so long had finally ended. The estate included an unexpected discovery, detailed journals documenting her 23-year plan, thousands of pages describing her surveillance of me, her preparations, her justifications. A complete blueprint of obsession. Caroline gave me the choice of reading them or destroying them. I had them destroyed. I didn't need to understand her motivations better. I needed to let her go. But I kept one thing, a photo of Grandma Dorothy and me when I was 7, baking that apple pie in her kitchen. Before the obsession consumed her. Before I became a vessel instead of a grandchild. When love was still love and not a cage. I framed it and put it in a box in the back of my closet. I'm not ready to display it. Maybe I never will be. But I need to remember that she was more than her illness, even if I can't forgive what that illness made her do. 4 years after my escape, I'm still living in Seattle, still working at Elliott Bay, now as co-owner. Patricia sold me half the business when she decided to semi-retire. Still married to Daniel, still in therapy, still jumping at unexpected packages. But I'm also learning to live again, to trust again, to imagine a future that isn't defined by what was done to me. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel completely safe, if I'll ever stop checking over my shoulder, if I'll ever be able to think about pregnancy without remembering that violation. Dr. Foster says maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is learning to live with the scars while refusing to let them define me. I don't know if I'm succeeding, but I'm trying. Last week, Madison and I drove down to Portland for the first time in 4 years. We visited Grandfather Henry's grave. I'd never been there before. It was a simple military headstone with his service dates. I left flowers, not for Grandma Dorothy's delusion, but for the man who died young and whose memory became a weapon. He didn't ask to be turned into an obsession. Do you forgive her? Maddie asked on the drive back to Seattle. I thought about it. I forgive the woman she was before. I can't forgive what she became. That seems fair. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Maddie said, "You know what's remarkable? She tried to turn you into a vessel, a tool, a means to an end. But you're none of those things. You're the person who owns a bookstore and married a man she chose and rescued a cat from a shelter. You're Elizabeth, just Elizabeth, and that's enough. Just Elizabeth." After years of being seen as a DNA match, a reproductive opportunity, a resurrection plan, Just being Elizabeth felt revolutionary. We stopped at that same plaid pantry on 39th Avenue. Tyler was still working there. He recognized me immediately. "Hey, blanket girl, you doing okay?" "Yeah," I said, "I'm doing okay." It wasn't completely true, but it wasn't completely false either. And for now, that's enough. This is my story, or a version of it. I've changed some details, not to hide, but because some things are too raw, too specific, too identifying. The core truth remains. My grandmother tried to force me to carry my grandfather's baby using frozen sperm he'd never consented to posthumous use of. She imprisoned me, violated me, gaslit me, and nearly destroyed me. And I survived. Not unscathed, not whole, but alive and free and building a life on my own terms. If you're reading this and something resonates, if you see echoes of your own family's dysfunction or coercive control or reproductive abuse, please know you're not alone. Please know it's not love. Please know you deserve freedom. Reproductive coercion is real. Family abuse is real. Complicated grief can become dangerous. And the systems meant to protect us often fail when abuse comes wrapped in the language of love and legacy. But survival is also real. Healing is possible. Freedom is worth fighting for. 4 years later, I'm still fighting, but I'm winning. And that has to be enough.